first up, I would like to take, hopefully I don't mispronounce your name, Sathya in Arizona. Pronouns are she, they. Sathya, you are live. Wait, what is the line we're supposed to say? You're on the line? You're on the line.
You're on the line. Sathya, like, you are on the line. You want to talk about the way you have concerns about us having some views. Wait, what? Sorry, it was scrolled off the screen. You have concerns about the way hosts often use the trans-supportive statements of medical organizations to say trans people deserve rights. Go for it. Are you there, Sathya? You might be muted.
Oh.
If not, we'll have to come back to you.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, there we go.
Hi.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Love the show. Sorry about the confusing wording on that. Love today's outfits. I discovered your show a few months ago, and I've obsessively been watching the back catalog. And seeing it back to back has caused me to see some of the same things being said repeatedly, and one of them's left me feeling a little uncomfortable. And I'm sorry, but I didn't have the chance to find a specific quote, so I'm going off of my memory of seeing you two say things to this effect, and I think I've seen Arden say it a little bit more emphatically. So when I say the thing, if people have misquoted you, please correct me.
No worries. Yeah, just go for
the argument is put forth. Okay, so the argument is put forth to explain why it is that trans people deserve liberation, self-determination, medical autonomy, etc. And the argument is something like this: all of the major medical organizations agree with the view that trans people deserve these rights, and that transitioning as directed by the patient is a proven strategy for minimizing suffering and maximizing the happiness of trans people. Does that sound roughly accurate?
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's certainly an argument you can make. Yeah, and I think I know where you're going.
I'm asking: is that an argument that this show has made?
Yeah, I think I probably said something quite similar to that before. But I would like to hear
a subset of my position.
Yeah. I think it's a. Yeah,
okay,
I think a subset of the position is probably a more accurate way to frame it. But I want to hear you expound on your point, and then we can kind of respond on that level.
Yeah. Cool. So here's my problem with it. First, it's an appeal to authority. Second, I feel it's a vulnerable one. Because recently, it sometimes feels like yesterday, medical institutions that are now supportive of trans people were anywhere from foot-dragging gatekeepers to kind of trans-skeptical to just outwardly hostile. And locking this up so cis people don't have to see the dangerous perverts out on the street. And I don't trust for a second that they're going to stay that way. Florida medical boards vote to ban medical care for trans kids as an example. And yeah, I understand that, for example, the American Medical Institution isn't staffed at Ron DeSantis' direction, unlike that board. But these institutions, like they've become trans supporters now, could change course, especially in reaction to an increasingly hostile political climate. So when I hear that argument deployed, I can't help but feel, yeah, but for now, and feel a bit queasy. And I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't have a replacement argument for it. It's just, I hear it and I'm just like,
Yeah.
Right? It's interesting. Sorry, I feel like you're going off hard and you go for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just going to say, first of all, with regards to it being an appeal to authority, in some sense it is, because an appeal to authority isn't always going to be fallacious, right? When you are appealing to the relevant medical experts on a topic to say that your position is in opposition to all of the relevant medical experts who are making their conclusions based on empiricism and actual studies and research, it's not the same as saying okay, well, I'm blanking on this, but I've gone through this before. Appealing to authorities isn't always fallacious.
It's I think maybe it's more the difference between an appeal to authority and an appeal to expertise. An appeal to authority is the king says this, or my dad says this, or someone who says that in charge of this said that. That's an appeal because they have authority, but they don't have any relevant understanding or expertise or knowledge or proof or evidence they can bring. Whereas an appeal to expertise is saying, well, this person has studied this for 30 years and they've got 50 papers in the topic. And that doesn't mean they're always right, but that means that they at least have more of a valuable opinion on this than someone who is only claimed to this as they're the king.
Yeah, I've never wanted, and it may have come off this way, I may have almost said exactly those words, but to clarify my position now here, I've never meant to say that because these organizations say so, trans people are valid, or like that would be like where it becomes fallacious. Because they say so, it is true. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they say so because they have the best medical evidence, or they're relying on studies and academia and all these things. But I agree with your point that organizations that are currently supportive of trans people could, in some fascist takeover, cave to the fascists and burn all those documents and say, actually, trans people are the devil and you need to go out and beat up the first trans person you see, right? So it's like you're saying, it's good to not rely on it's true because this organization said so. But I think to what Katie was saying, it's mostly to be like a subset of my argument when somebody says something like, you're denying the science or you're denying reality by being trans. Like a good response to that is, okay, but the science actually is in support of trans people and you stand in opposition to the science. So if anyone's denying science here, it's the anti-trans people.
Right. But I can see that.
Yeah,
I
definitely empathize with your concerns.
I think that
no, go ahead.
Yeah, I think on this point, I think it is a valid point to make, and sometimes when I say this, and especially when it's in a Twitter argument where you've got limited words and stuff, for now, you say something like, oh well, all of it's kind of like a quick one-liner to say, well, all of the medical organizations of any note basically in the world agree with my position, and no one agrees with yours, and who the fuck are you? You're a nobody and you don't even know what you're talking about. That's kind of true, and there's some weight to that argument, but it's also true that like the NHS is garbage for trans people. There are loads of medical organizations which just are garbage for trans people. They're behind on like international standards, and there's a huge debate about the international standards, about whether they're good enough. There's loads of people pulling in all kinds of different directions on there, and to an extent you'll get that on anything, but you would definitely have a lot of trans people will say that the healthcare they have from the experts is rubbish, and I would also argue that, and I think that's someone could flip that around and say, well, who are you? You're not an expert either, and you're saying that like the NHS are wrong. And basically all I can really say, as another kind of one line to that is, well, there's international guidelines written by people who are even more experts than the people at the NHS. But then you do end up with this kind of problem where you're just saying, oh, well, these experts and these experts. But the point is, the real argument and you can make in a more long form argument is when we say like, the sort of conservative meme of trust the science, where they just say that as if people who aren't conservative just blindly say that. What we're really saying is when we make a claim about a medical treatment or a medicine or a therapeutic treatment or something, when you make some kind of claim about this, we're saying that we've got some level of confidence that we can predict that it will be beneficial in some way. Like we can test this. We have done tests on it before. When we say something like, opium reduces pain or something like that, that is not just like someone who has loads of expertise in the field or whatever. And it's not just a written guideline by the experts. It's also, we have decades of research done, that's peer-reviewed by people all over the world from different competing medical organizations and private enterprises and all kinds of things, showing that to some degree of confidence, and a high degree of confidence in the case of opium, being a painkiller, that this works, and we know some of the mechanism and that kind of thing. And if we were to have some weird authoritarian government come along and say, right, all of the people in charge of all of the medical boards in this country now believe only in homeopathy and don't believe in medicine, then suddenly the argument, well, all the experts say, maybe it wouldn't hold up or something. But what would hold up? The science, but like the evidence we have, the peer-reviewed studies, the decades of repeatable experiments and predictions that we can make will still be there. And if maybe they could destroy them all, but now with the internet, that's much harder. And we just end up in a position where maybe they could even force us back to, stage zero. But the thing is, we find medicine for experiment and evidence, and we'll get there again. Like, that's just the reality of it. Like, we're always, humans are always going to discover that opium is a painkiller unless we were to somehow, prevent us from having the ingredients to make that. Like it's like an inevitable discovery of medicine. I don't know, maybe I don't know enough about the history of opium to make that as a strong claim, but the point is we're appealing to human advancement and understanding of the world rather than just humans who are making a claim, I think is the point here. Sorry, I didn't go ahead.
And I think you're probably right, Satya, that I'm sure the way that it was phrased, probably in some of the episodes you've seen, might not have been as explicitly clear. Because I mean, when you're doing these shows and you're trying to synthesize like loads of academic research with the individual claim that the caller is making versus like having a brain fart or something, because these things all happen when you're live on air. You don't always word things correctly. And I'm sure there have been many times where I've worded something clumsily. So I appreciate you calling to ask for clarification, because I definitely wouldn't want people to think that I'm saying, we're valid because this medical organization says so. That's not the line. The medical organization may have been like, the proxy. They conducted the research that gave us the evidence, but it's not because of them. As like an authority.
Yeah, and maybe an easier parallel would be, it overplayed and everyone always uses like flat Earth, but like when I say I'm arguing with some idiot who is on the internet saying that the Earth is flat, I am not a physicist or an astronomer or anyone with relevant qualification on the shape of the Earth. But what I can do is say, well, all of the international space organizations agree that the world is round. All of the physicists agree that. And that doesn't make it true. And if they were to all change their minds, it wouldn't change. The reality is still there. And any experiments we do are going to reveal that reality. Like the more experiments we do reveals that in a more and more clearer picture and solidifies our worldview more and more. And the worst possible case would be all the experts suddenly disappearing or being, displaced with idiots. But the truth would still be there. And the goal of science is to just try and create the best model in our minds and as like a society, as understanding of the world as possible. And the only way we can get there is by making predictions and testing them. And it might be that transition isn't the best healthcare for trans people. Maybe that's true. But if that's the case, we're a long way off finding that. And currently, all the evidence we have does point towards it being the best treatment that we know. Maybe, aliens will turn up and they'll be like, oh, yes, we've got this in our home world and we do this other thing instead. And it makes people even happier and better off. Maybe that's the case. But we're only going to get to that. We're only going to get to a position where we can say, healthcare X is better than transition by doing more science. Like that's the only way that we'll get there. and what might happen is some politics will get in the way and politicians will say, no, we don't like that because of moral reasons, as in we have no morals. Therefore, we're now overruling what the science shows, but we won't ever be in a position. Well, we might be in a position where the science reveals that transition is bad, but we won't be in a position where science reveals conversion therapy is better than transition. And I'm fairly confident in that because we have so much evidence. Like it's kind of overwhelming on that point. So I don't know. I hope that's explained it. I do actually want to say one more thing just before we hand over to see what you had to say. When I saw the show notes, I thought the way you were going to take them. The point you've raised is really interesting because I wasn't expecting it. I thought the way you were going to take this was, so are you saying that like the only reason that trans people deserve bodily autonomy and rights and stuff is because the science shows that transition is good?
Yeah.
And I think, and that's why I said it was a subset of my position, because it is true that what evidence we have shows that trans healthcare is the best healthcare we have available that we know about for trans people. But that itself is not my only reason as to why I think people should have bodily autonomy and trans people should have rights. And it's like the classic, I don't think being LGBT is a choice. But if it was a choice, so what? You should still be able to choose to transition. You should still be able to choose to marry someone of the same sex as you, because fuck off, it doesn't affect anyone else. Like that's like an even more core premise. And I can say fuck off to people, but that doesn't always convince people. So I can also say, well, look, number one, fuck off. Number two, all the science backs me up. And number three, fuck off. And that's, so there's like layers of arguments there. But yeah, Arden, do you have anything else to say, or Sathya, do you have?
I want to pass it back to Sathya, but yeah, I pretty much agree. I think, like autonomy is the core there, and we can never really know if someone is, being trans because of a choice or being trans because that they're just like, there's a brain state that is just immovable that's there, right? There's no way to tell the difference between those things. So it seems like the best thing to do is to just take people's word for it, give them access to the healthcare that's best for them. But yeah, we threw a lot at you, so I do want to give you a chance to respond.
Unfortunately, I got about a third of what the two of you said, so I will have to watch the show. Yeah, like I'll be honest. When I've heard people like Wes call in and he's constantly saying, "Oh, I didn't hear you," I've been falsely assuming that he's just saying that to like go, "Oh, well, I'm going to disregard what you said." But yeah, I actually only heard about a third, so I'll catch it up later. What you said sounded reasonable. I assume you've said other things that will put my mind at ease.
I hope so, and if not, you should call us back and go at us again.
Okay, we'll do. Thank you both, and mayo is delicious, whether it's slime or not.
Hell yeah! Have a good one.
Number one, fuck you.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Snow, executive producer for The Line and avid candy eater. Hey, if you'd like to support this channel, you can do so now on Patreon or as a channel member with tiers specific to supporting specific shows and hosts. And it also supports our ability to expand programming going forward. You could also leave a super thanks down below, get a little special highlighted comment, and I'll tell you what, you could hit like and you could hit subscribe. Now, here are some video suggestions so we can fudge that algorithm. Go with one of ours. Forget everyone else on YouTube. I'm begging.